Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Today, welcome back our head of research. I barely recognised him. You've cut off all the locks, so welcome back, Michael.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Looking
Good to be
good,
back.
looking good. Before we get into it, just a
Yeah,
quick
new
bit of
year, new me.
housekeeping for everyone at home. But this Michael's been pumping out all our alpha on different altcoins in the weekly wrap up, guys. So don't forget to sign up for that free newsletter if you want. And I know this has been our most popular new feature with Philip joining the team. He's just given another update on where we are in this cycle and how all our secret indicators are looking on when to sell. So Philip's been an awesome addition to the team as well, hasn't he, Michael?
Yeah, it's been awesome. And that's cool just to have. We've got a really good collection of different people with different skill sets now as well. So you can get a pretty well rounded view of what's going on.
Across different ecosystems because it's just
Yeah, yeah.
insane the amount of stuff that's happening. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. So I want to get into what's happening here with Deepbook and all the AI relationship. A few interesting things you've got with tying back to TikTok and how that might tie into crypto, what Trump's doing for crypto and politics. So plenty of cool topics to dive into today. But any just overall thoughts before we dive into these slides?
Nah, it's weird, just like weird sentiment in the market, isn't it? Like it's there's so much happening, and we'll cover that off. And we want to make these more regular, so because there's just so much to cover. But it's hard to get a finger on like what people are doing at the moment.
Well, I think there's two types of investors. There's those that are, as always, every cycle, people that have got too many alts, and that's why our main message has always been, Bitcoin, ETH, and probably Sol now falls into that sort of blue chippy category. And if you were here with us, following us through all the cycles like we have, you got into Bitcoin, ETH, and Sol at the lows, and so there's plenty of people that have done well. It's the people that are all alts and in the wrong alts and
Yeah,
last cycle alts that are struggling. Going, when's alt season? And it's probably not going to happen like people are
yeah, not in the same
expecting.
way.
If there's 30,
Yeah,
what's the stat? 30 million altcoins now. It's just too
yeah.
diluted.
Mil-
Yeah.
million. I even heard something crazy is a million new a day or something like that, but there's not a million new users coming in a day.
Yeah. So people have to start thinking about, well, what are the channels that it's going to go into? And there was another
Mm.
announcement I read just before that was it Phantom Wallet or Pump.Fun was acquiring, is it Moonshot? That was like the allows you to pay with
Yeah,
credit card that Chump and that used.
yep.
So that's kind of like this is what we needed to see, like easier ways to on ramp. And I think that the Stacks X First wallet has that feature now. So it's the ecosystems that are going to allow people, when that hype starts to come and they hear about a coin, just to go click one button, buy with credit card or whatever, and you're not going, you need this wallet, then you need this coin, then you need this exchange. So that's kind of, it's a promising thing to see for those that are wanting alt season, that these features have been added.
100%. Don't click on this link because then you're going to lose everything. Like it can be pretty intimidating.
Yeah, awesome. Well, if you want to dive into these slides, let's talk about. I think you got Deepbook first up, which is this new AI phenomenon taking Twitter and the world by storm. It's already got to number one
Yeah, Deeps.
app, I think, downloaded already on the App Store.
It has. And so for those in our time recording, we're Tuesday morning right now. So I think many people might have seen there was a bit of a sell off over the weekend, and as the stock market opened in the US, effectively around Deepseek. And so this connects into crypto, and which we'll touch on in a minute. But essentially, what this is, it's a sort of a Chat GPT competitor um, from OpenAI. But OpenAI has sunk in billions of dollars and something like 10 years of time, and it just an insane amount of GPU and data center power. Where these guys are claiming that they've done this with $5.5 million, less than 2,000 staff, and they've done it in like an insanely short period of time, like less than 2 years or something like that. And they've been able to generate something that's as good, if not better, than ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Now, what this did for the stock market is that obviously Nvidia has had an insane run on the premise that everyone's going to need their GPU compute power to make these models better and better and better.
Yeah.
Now, if these guys are saying that they can do this without that, that's devastating to the market cap of Nvidia. And
Yes.
so that's where the sell off started.
Yeah, and so I think I misspoke and said
But
deep book
obviously,
before,
we got
by
to
the way,
take,
guys.
yeah,
But yeah, deep sea. Deep book was. I just recorded another video about Sui ecosystem, and that's their top decks, I think. So yeah,
liquidity provider. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that's the one. Yeah, obviously, the counter side to this story is that, like, is this real? Like, did they actually really do it for that price with that amount of staff with that in that time period? China's not supposed to have access to these H100 GPUs the same way that the rest of the world does, because it's obviously an international security threat, I guess. And so the theory is that maybe they do have access to them, but they can't talk about it, and they're just saying that this is not powered in the way that it actually is. But either way, it's pretty frightening, and the whole market got pretty spooked over the weekend. Like all of the AI stocks, all of the obviously the chip manufacturers, everything started to bleed pretty hard, and that's why we got a little bit of a correction. And even the top AI protocols all got smashed over the weekend, as well. As I think in the short term, this kind of might be a little bit turbulent, but ultimately competition is always interesting.
Yeah, and I think it ties into some political conversations, as you say, about, well, if they did get all those NVIDIA GPUs and stuff they weren't meant to, is that some dealings that were shady and shouldn't have happened from a previous administration, or, what's the go here? And with Trump talking about tariffs and stuff, it's just so interesting watching this play out as AI is just pushing the boundaries. And I'm really hesitant and concerned about how fast this is progressing. If you think about where it's come just in recent months and how quickly it's going to take everyone's jobs and start to affect the economy and the real world. So, yeah.
Well, Mark Andreessen, the main dude behind Andreessen Horowitz, he kind of said that this was the Sputnik moment. And for those that aren't familiar with the analogy, it's like, the US thought that they were super far ahead in the space race, and then all of a sudden the Russians came out with a Sputnik satellite, which got into orbit quicker than what the Americans were anticipating.
Yeah.
And America was thinking that they were years ahead of China in AI, and then all of a sudden they've got a competitive product that supposedly was much cheaper and much easier. So yeah, it's the new AI Cold War, I guess.
Yeah, and it is. Oh, don't get me wrong. It's phenomenally handy and great for work and when you're researching and stuff to use. Even just you're on X and you can just use Grok within a click. Like all this stuff is phenomenal for when I'm researching my videos on any topic. But yeah, the fact that I think the next step that is really going to hit people hard is when we have that voice command. So you don't even have to type anymore, and it becomes like a Siri where it's just all voice commanded, tying to these AI to produce images and then movies, and what happens to content creation. I've already spoke about Pandora that we've been helping a little bit. The AI agent that's entirely AI, and she does TikTok videos. I think her first one got 80,000 views or something ridiculous. So all this stuff is happening and is going to change the world big time, and it's coming, it's right on our doorstep now, and it's pretty scary. Yep.
Watch this space. Tying back into that, obviously we've had week one of the new Trump administration, and man, hasn't it been interesting to watch from afar? And obviously we obviously do have a lot of American viewers, so welcome. But here in Australia, I guess we get to watch from afar a little bit and just sort of see exactly in our microcosm, how that impacts the world and the ripple effects. But especially Trump came in all guns blazing and did do a lot of the things that he's been saying that he's going to do, with a few exceptions.
Yeah.
And everyone was waiting for that big strategic Bitcoin reserve comment, which didn't come. We got a bit of turbulence in the market around that as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some positives, hasn't there? Like talking about no tax on US-based coins, just being pro-crypto, regulation and cutting red tape. There's been plenty of, states and other people talk about or put forward bills with strategic reserves. So obviously we would love for Trump to come out and say, hey, we're going to start buying the 200,000 Bitcoin a year that they talk about or whatever. So, actions speak louder than words, but there's still plenty of stuff happening. There hasn't been any really anti-crypto stuff. So we can't complain just yet. But yeah.
Not at all. Yeah, not at all. I'm pretty bullish on still what's going on here. I think people are they overestimate and underestimate. And so people freak out more than they need to freak out in bearish times, and they get, I guess a little bit spoiled in some of the good times. And, with some of the stuff that's come out even just this week with, the new crypto and AI czar and the new SEC task force, and Senator Loomis is now running the banking commission. The repealing back of that, I forget the name of the law, but it was preventing banks from custodying crypto.
Yes.
All of this stuff just got done in 6 days. And any one of those individual news pieces, in previous years, would have ripped the market. So we're a little bit spoiled, I guess, right here, because everyone's expecting, 500K Bitcoin now, because America's going to become the biggest buyer, and they're all going to be competing over picking up all the leftover Bitcoin around the world. But I think now's the time to be really paying attention. The Twitter timeline seems to be wanting to be bearish about it, but I think it's the opposite. I think this is only positive for our industry for sure.
Yeah. And Ross Ulbricht being pardoned. And guys, if you don't know the story of Ross Ulbricht, there's some awesome documentaries out there now. Even I think Netflix might even have one. But check those out. The way that he started the Silk Road as an open source marketplace, and then he got framed, and then how they pinned him down. It's an absolutely crazy true story. So, but it's amazing to see him out and free again. So
11 years he did.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So moving on, I guess, from the Trump one, I guess there's been a little bit of drama this week. The one was with this one with Vitalik. So I don't know if you saw much on what happened here.
Yeah.
The backstory that's been simmering is that the Ethereum community obviously is getting a little impatient. The fact that the when number go up, and the fact that Solana's obviously done very well. There's a bunch of other projects which have done very well. Bitcoin just won't stop, but Ethereum seems to can't catch a bid. And the community is getting a little bit impatient. And this is kind of interesting when you watch the dialogue coming out of like the top tiers of Ethereum leadership. And I know that it's a decentralized network, but there's still a foundation, the Ethereum Foundation, which does execute a lot of the EIPs, and they're the ones who sort of determine when things get upgraded. And they've also got a lot of ETH that they continually sell into the market as well.
Yeah.
People were calling for a replacement of the CEO with a different CEO. And this is what Vitalik was tweeting about here. He's like effectively pulled rank and said, nah, like everyone needs to stop talking because I'm the one that makes the decision here, which is generally not the narrative that we've seen coming out of it. What we consider to be the most decentralized, smart contract network.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder if there's a bit more like context to it here. If he's sort of trying to pull rank as the Ethereum Foundation leader, which is different to saying, hey, I'm the leader of Ethereum and that kind of thing. But either way you look at it, it's not a good look. I've spoken about it and I posted about it a while ago while I was lightening up a little bit on my ETH position because no one was a bigger ETH bull than me from 2015 to recently. But they've just lost their way a little bit. Solana have made things easier for speculation. And that's where basically we've only seen money in inflows this cycle. There hasn't been a real killer app that's come out yet, like a decentralized Facebook or Twitter on Ethereum or one of the ETH layers 2s that we would have loved to have seen by now that you probably would have thought we'd have by now if you were talking back 5, 6, 7 years ago. So, yeah, I think ETH need to really make some hard decisions. I don't think that all the layer 2s on ETH can survive by paying proof of stake fees. It's another reason to be more bullish on Bitcoin when ETH is having centralization, these leadership issues, which Bitcoin doesn't have. So very interesting times. But let's not forget that Solana and Sui and these others all suffer from these same centralization issues and whatever. There's no one's solved the trilemma yet.
Not at all. I mean, because I'm from the Nuggets News community. Like I that's where I grew. I got into crypto in 2017 and kind of followed some of those same ethos and values. And so obviously we're here to make money. Like we all like the idea of increasing our financial freedom, but I'm very aligned to the idea of this decentralization narrative and sovereign money. And I think Ethereum was the closest smart contract bet to that. Obviously Bitcoin is its own category, but Ethereum was always that leader and that pioneer. And that was always the criticism when we didn't have any L2s and Binance Smart Chain was the main competitor, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And we all knew that it was run from CZ's 3 computers. It wasn't ever decentralized at all.
Yeah.
And yes, it was open finance and it was easy, but it wasn't decentralized. And that's been the knock on how decentralized is Solana. Do you have to own a data center to actually run one of these nodes? So Ethereum's always kind of had, I think, the Bitcoiners that weren't maximalists, that did still like the idea of smart contract layers, were always here, and it has a lot of that Bitcoin values. And so that's why this one's, I guess, a little bit interesting and eyebrow raising.
Yeah, and as I've spoken about in all my Bitcoin DeFi interviews and that research we've done, we've seen some devs that did a lot of work on ETH in the early days have come and started to help build out on Stacks or these other emerging Bitcoin layer 2s and different tech. So watch this space. And probably another thing just to mention there that ties in with everything that's happening is what maybe Trump, all this rumors around Trump and is it World Liberty Finance that bought another $10 million of ETH
Yeah.
just before at time of recording? And are they going to launch
Yep.
some sort of DeFi platform themselves? And how's that going to tie into everything? So there's plenty happening in the crypto space. People just don't have a clear narrative to invest in. It's been all about trading and pump and dumps on Solana really so far this cycle.
Yep. I'll just caveat this with like I'm very like ETH is still my heaviest position right now, just ahead of Bitcoin, just because I do think that pairing has kind of like gotten fairly beaten down, and I was expecting some sort of like recovery there from ETH. So, but ETH is equally my biggest holding, just ahead of Bitcoin, and then Solana, obviously the other sort of leg of my three blue chips.
Yeah.
But so I'm not bearish ETH at all, but it's just very interesting. And you had even Justin Sun chime in here saying I could take it to 10K instantly. I just do this. But everyone's got an opinion, and that's what happens in decentralized networks.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Well, we got a little bit of drama this week as well with one of our favorite projects, Thorchain. So I don't know if anyone was following this, but there was some big discussion around what was going on Twitter. And obviously we had some, just in the last 7 days, we had a bit of a drawdown going, what did we go here from 350 all the way down to 150? I think it actually hit on some exchanges.
Yeah.
Essentially what this was around was not the core protocol of Thorchain. Thorchain is the most decentralized and best cross-chain swapping mechanism. It generates a huge amount of revenue, but they've bolted on extra features over the years. And one of them was kind of like this lend and earn feature. And there was questions around its solvency. And so effectively they just froze it. And I think it's just going to have to get cut off. But as we see, like it's recovered. The actual core protocol is like still fine. But my timeline was getting blown up on this. Like, is Thorchain a buy at, sub $2, or is it just, swirling around the toilet bowl ready to go to zero? And I don't think that's the case. I do think that this was an incredible opportunity for anyone who got in, sub $2.
Yes.
But it's a watch this space because these, I think, are scars that give protocols more legitimacy when they can show that they can be battle tested, the FUD machine, and then come out on top of it. And I do think that will be the case here with Thorchain.
Yeah, I tend to agree as well. I still own Thorchain. I think JP just took on way too much at that one stage there on Twitter where he was really looking to acquire projects that were on fire sales and whatever, and just took on too much. And again, it's probably whether it's just harder and harder to get good devs because there's so many projects now and there's lots of components to that. But as you say, the core protocol, people don't understand Thorchain and the ability to swap assets natively in your own wallet has been integrated into so many of these wallets on the back end that people don't even know they're using it. And so Thorchain doesn't really do much marketing or anything like that. Now JP is pushing the new Deepseek wallet, which again I think is going to be a great play and a secure way to store your crypto. But that core feature that allows people to swap makes tens of millions of dollars a year. So it's one of the few protocols that has clearly great revenue. And when on Twitter we saw, this is a death spiral, and maybe people not understanding that this is kind of a separate component that they've agreed now to, I think, freeze, form a restructuring plan to pay back those users over time or whatever. But the actual core Thorchain itself and being able to swap different assets from different chains all from a click of a button in a decentralized way, none of that's changed or hasn't had any hacks or bugs or anything.
Not at all. Yeah. So I wouldn't hit the panic button on this at all. If you're looking to try and trade it, like just proceed with caution and watch. But I do think that there's been some awesome opportunities here, and I do think it's a protocol that will last the test of time.
Beautiful.
Another one which I guess would have been humongous news as well is what's going on with TikTok in America. So I know that there's been some developments recently now with Trump actually coming in saying that he's stayed the decision, or he's allowing for the opportunity for a 50% buyout. I think you can actually still technically get on TikTok in the States at the moment after it went dark there for a little bit. I've heard conflicting reports about this at the moment. I do think that they want to have a sale here. Like that's just what Trump's trying to force here. He's trying to force an American buyer. And so even I think he said the other day that he would allow for a 50% ownership still from China, and they would own 50%. So we'll see what happens on that. But if it is sold, or if there is a forced sale, the leading bid, there was a few competing bids with Kevin O'Leary and then this one, Project Liberty. Now, Kevin O'Leary has now joined Project Liberty's bid, and I think they've offered something like $20 billion for it or something like that. But what I find interesting around this is Project Liberty is actually uses blockchain. And so these guys are, I think, the leading bid if there is some sort of forced sale or some sort of requirement that there needs to be an American owner. And what Project Liberty is, it's like a group of, I guess, a consortium of people who come and join together and have those decentralization values where we own our own data, we own our own identity on the internet. And they've already got a bunch of other projects. Like one of them is called MeWe, which is a decentralized project, decentralized social media project, which you can go use right now. And you control your own data. There's no sort of data scraping or harvesting of your information and sold to people. But if they do get this, plan to put it on Frequency, which is a blockchain. And so I don't believe that there's a token here yet. But the idea is that this would go on Frequency. And Frequency is an NL1, but it is actually part of the Polkadot ecosystem. And so there's been a bit of chat around online. You can see like Paul Barron Network, which is a pretty big channel, has spoken about this multiple times. But if this does happen, these guys are waiting in the wings because effectively they wouldn't get the algorithm, so they'd need to have their own back-end algorithm, and the Project Liberty bid plans on putting it on Frequency. So I still think it's a long shot whether this actually happens, but let's watch this space for sure. It's an interesting one.
Yeah, I think it's a long shot too, but I think it's just great that we're starting to see this is what I was so passionate about, all those years ago. It was like this, so when social media censorship was starting, we need to get apps. Like I mentioned before, we haven't had that Facebook or TikTok or decentralized Twitter moment just yet. The other thing that's interesting with all this Twitter stuff, which I've been covering in my Evil Elites videos talking about all the politics going on around the world, is that one of the reasons that they wanted to ban it was not really because of the Chinese ownership. It was the things that were trending were things that they wanted to censor. And America and the West and all the things that they want to censor, which you guys hopefully know about if you're a subscriber, aren't aligned with what those elites and all the the technocracy want to push. And it was funny, as you said, it went offline, and when it came back online, the most topical things that were trending with the war in the Middle East, and things like Free Palestine got reclassified if you comment that on a post as hate speech and that type of thing. So it dives like deep into this world of politics and censorship and all that type of thing as well. So it's important for people to be aware of that, without taking sides or anything, just what is now classified as hate speech and what's not. And this just feels like they're forever encroaching on our freedoms, particularly here in Australia.
Yeah, it's a watch this space one. So anyway, it's been an action-packed week. There's been a lot happening. We'll keep our finger on the pulse and come back with some more shortly. But so many of these individual stories would have been massive, like only a short period of time ago. But it just seems like we're flooded with blockchain information and news and happenings these days. So it's an exciting time to be alive.
Absolutely. Hope you guys have enjoyed that. Michael and I are planning on doing this weekly now, as there's just so much happening. So smash that like button. Let us know if there's any projects or protocols you want us to talk about in the comments below. We'll keep an eye on it too. But thanks for joining us, mate.
Cheers.
Take care.